I'm slowly going from Tintin to Jimmy Neutron. Okay, so let's talk about part 3. But before we do, we are more than 2/3 through this book, and as a particularly insightful student I have said, it kind of feels like we're still at the beginning. It's true, a lot of this feels like we're still in the status quo part of this hero's journey. And I think part of that comes with the dystopian genre. We expect a rebellion, and it doesn't seem like we're close to that, so it feels like the author is simply world building or characterizing relationships for us. And yeah, I also think that's kind of on purpose. In many ways, it's the failure of these characters to go on that hero's journey that is the point, or at least one of the points. This is the story of what happens when we don't rebel. The status quo persists. We stay at the beginning of the quest story and never go on the quest. But we're in part 3 now, and part 3 has not one, but 2 quests for us to follow. The first is a quest proposed by Ruth to visit a boat stuck in the marshlands, which seems to be popular among donors and carers. And this whole part is just riddled with symbols. So they get in the car and they hit the road. That should be our first clue that this is a quest, and all quests are about self-discovery. They hit the road and they pick up Tommy on their way. And there's an interesting little nugget about the place where Tommy is undergoing his donations. It used to be a family resort with a pool, but that pool is filled in now and is part of an entrance square to the hospital. You can still see the outline of the pool, and Kathy has a quick daydream about somebody taking a high dive and only hitting the concrete. It's a darker thought than we'd usually expect from Kathy, but beyond that, let's look at the symbolism here. In literature, water is nearly always a symbol of life, rebirth, baptism, forgiveness, anything like that. Here, the lack of water, we can assume, reflects the lack of those things. It's at a hospital where the state legally takes life. The rebirth, redemption, forgiveness, whatever we want to call it, just isn't possible. So they pick up Tommy and they begin the quest. Quests are about self-discovery, but they are also about the process. And the fact that Kathy is the navigator during this quest, I feel, is important. Particularly because in part 2, Ruth proposed a very similar road trip wherein she, of course, would be the driver with the car. But Ruth is not the driver here. Kathy is the one who decides which paths to take. The whole novel so far has had Kathy defer to Ruth, but here, Ruth defers to Kathy. And what does it mean when Kathy is literally and metaphorically leading the way? Well, it means that the lies that they will live with won't be ones about their future. The lies that they will tell on this trip will be about how everybody is okay with the fact that Chrissy died after 2 donations. It'll be about how everything that is okay. In a moment of very obvious symbolism, they come across a barbed wire fence, and Ruth nearly has a breakdown because she just doesn't have the grit to overcome this obstacle. Kathy and Tommy tell her it's no problem if they work together and they hold the fence above their heads. She bows down underneath it, and they proceed. Ruth then apologizes with something like, it's just that sometimes bending down like that, I'm not so clever at it. And yeah, accepting the help of others, bowing down to allow the strength of others to make this quest possible. Ruth's pride sometimes doesn't allow that kind of genuflect. But she does here. She's changed, and so the quest can continue. And they successfully reach the object of their quest, the boat, the symbolic boat. Kathy asks the pertinent question. How did it get here? Yes, Kathy, how did we get here? How did we, as a civilization, get to a place where this can happen? 2 theories are offered to answer that question. Perhaps there was once water and it dried up, leaving the boat there. Or perhaps the boat was discarded here to rot in the marshes when it ceased to be of use. Now, this boat is a symbol of many things. It's many things to many different characters, and I cannot possibly address them all. It's not useful to, I think, pin it down and say it's a symbol of their broken bodies, similarly discarded. Yeah, I mean, that might be true, but it ends the conversation, and symbols inspire conversation. They don't end conversations. One idea, among many, might be that this boat is a symbol of how technology has outpaced civilization's ability to deal with it ethically or to find a way to compassionately deal with the products of innovation. Like in that case, the water would be symbolic of our empathy for a population oppressed by technology, and the boat would be the freedom that that population had to escape. The redemptive nature of water dried up, leaving what was once a free-floating vessel, a human life, unable to move on from this landscape of death. And so faster than our ability to maintain the autonomy of all populations could adapt, the compassionate waters dried up. Maybe it was global warming. I don't know. Leave your ideas in the comments below. I'd love to hear what people think the boat is a symbol for. So just as we might find many symbolic applications for this image of a broken and beached ship, so do our characters. Tommy immediately compares it to an abandoned Hailsham. Ruth then revives this vision of water when she imagines Hailsham flooded, Noah style, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Ruth is redeemed in this section, and partly it's because of her accepting the importance of their shared past. Hailsham is their shared past. So all quests are about self-discovery, and they find this boat so symbolically resonant of their experience, a broken and discarded vessel. They found themselves, and it's not cute. During the return portion of this short and truncated hero's journey, Tommy and Kathy start to gang up a bit on Ruth. They drive past a billboard with an open office plan, and they remind Ruth of how she used to think she was special. And to be clear, by special, I mean she felt as though she would be worthy of a generic office position. They were ultimately pretty modest aspirations. Their bullying just seems kind of cruel. Clearly Ruth is not the only one who's changed, as Kathy is now willing to treat Ruth with cruelty in order to be close with Tommy. She wasn't able to do that earlier. They start telling her that if she really felt as though she deserved special treatment, as she always seemed to imply, that she should have tried. She should have tried to break out of this system. Ruth takes this opportunity to, 1, apologize for keeping them away from each other in a pretty emotional turn of events, and then to turn her argument back on them. I mean, yes, Ruth should have tried. But now, she insists, they have to try. She gives them Madame's address and sets them off on another quest. These chapters are loaded with things to discuss, and I know I wasn't able to get to many of them. There's the fact that Kathy cries for the first time in this novel. There's the image right at the start of a man holding balloons after Kathy laments the closing of Hailsham. There's the way that Kathy tells us about the closing of Hailsham. There's the way that she tells the readers of Ruth's death. And there's also the fact that Kathy keeps saying that everybody dealt with the death of Chrissy really well, when clearly both Ruth and Tommy are sad and angry about it. So I wasn't able to discuss those things, but please feel free to comment on them below. Only one more section left. Finish the book, and I'll see you in a couple days.